"Tie me up," said the Apache woman to the rancher who freed her. The solitary man didn't know it. On the edge of this vast, lonely land, a small ranch stood in quiet solitude. It was old and rugged, with a wooden fence that had seen better days, and a handful of horses grazing lazily in the dusty yard. Life here was simple, unhurried, and lonely, for the rancher who lived there preferred the company of his animals to that of people. He had been a man shaped by loss. His family had been taken by illness many years ago, leaving him with nothing but memories and the land that his ancestors had carved out from the unforgiving desert. He had learned to live with the silence, to hear the whisper of the wind through the cacti, the distant cry of a hawk, and the gentle rustle of the horses as they moved across the dry earth. Each day followed a routine, tending the animals, checking the fences, and making sure there was water and food for all. And though he had come to accept this life, there was always a quiet emptiness that lingered, a longing for something he had long stopped expecting. That evening, as he walked along the narrow path that led to a small spring beyond the ridge, he noticed something unusual. At first he thought it was a shadow, a trick of the fading light. But as he drew closer, he realized it was a person, lying motionless near a thicket of sagebrush. The man's heart quickened, and a cautious curiosity took over. He had encountered travelers before, wandering souls seeking shelter or water, but this was different. As he approached, he saw that it was a woman, her clothes torn and dusty, her hair matted with sweat and grime. She lay half-hidden, her breathing shallow, her eyes closed as if she were asleep, or worse, unconscious. The rancher's instincts immediately took over. He knelt beside her and gently touched her shoulder. "Hey," he said softly, careful not to startle her. "Are you all right?" She didn't ask for help, didn't explain why she was here, and yet there was a subtle plea in her eyes that made him pause. "I can help you," he replied, keeping his tone gentle. "There's water, food, and a place to rest." Finally, she nodded slightly, enough for him to understand that she would accept his help, at least for now. He led her back to the ranch slowly, making sure she could keep her balance. Every step was careful, deliberate, because he did not know what she had been through or who might be following her. When they reached the porch, he offered her a seat and handed her a cup of water. She drank quickly, almost desperately, then paused, staring at the horizon. "I thank you," she said finally. It was quiet, almost a whisper, but the gratitude in her voice was unmistakable. The rancher smiled faintly, though he was aware of the unspoken tension. "Don't worry about thanking me. You needed help, that's all." The wind carried the faint scent of sage and dust, and the world seemed to shrink around them. The rancher noticed her movements were careful, deliberate. Every small gesture, how she shifted in her seat, how she avoided sudden movements, told him she had learned to survive in ways he could only guess at. After some time, he led her inside the small cabin. It was modest, with a single fireplace, a worn table, and a bed in the corner. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke and dried herbs. He helped her settle on the bed, offering blankets to keep her warm. She accepted them without a word, curling up slightly, her eyes still alert even in rest. As he prepared a simple meal of bread, beans, and a little meat, he kept stealing glances at her. There was something remarkable about her, something that drew his attention and curiosity. She was strong, yet vulnerable, cautious, yet brave. Her presence stirred a long-forgotten part of him, a sense of connection he had buried with his family's memory. Finally, she spoke again, her voice steady despite the exhaustion in her eyes. "I am grateful for your help. But you should know, I am not like other people you may have helped. I have traveled far and there is more ahead, but tonight I am safe." Night fell fully, and the desert was bathed in silver light from a bright moon. Outside, the coyotes called to one another, and the wind whispered through the cacti. Inside, the rancher kept watch over the woman, not out of suspicion, but because something about her presence demanded care and attention. He had learned in life that the quietest moments often carried the most meaning. Hours passed, and sleep finally claimed him in short, uneasy bursts. When he awoke briefly in the middle of the night, he noticed her sitting at the edge of the bed, staring out of the window. The moonlight illuminated her features, casting shadows that made her look both ethereal and strong. She turned to him and their eyes met, sharing a silent understanding. "You saved me," she said softly. Not everyone would have stopped. Not everyone would have risked everything for someone they do not know. What do you mean?" He could feel the story around this woman, the history and danger woven into her every movement, and he realized that life at his quiet ranch was about to change in ways he could never predict. Outside, the desert stretched endlessly, indifferent to human concerns. But inside the small cabin, the first threads of an extraordinary, unforeseen connection were forming, between a solitary rancher and a woman whose life had been shaped by survival, fear, and courage. They were strangers, yet somehow bound together by fate, and the events of the coming days would test every ounce of trust, bravery, and resilience they possessed. The night deepened, carrying with it the whispers of wind and the scent of distant sage. The rancher slept fitfully, unsure what the morning would bring, but certain of one thing: his life, so long quiet and predictable, was about to take a path he could never have imagined. And in the shadows of that desert night, the woman waited silently, her thoughts unreadable, her story only beginning to unfold. The morning sun crept slowly over the desert horizon, spilling golden light across the ranch. The horses stirred in the yard, their hooves scraping against the dry soil, and a soft breeze carried the scent of sage and distant wildflowers. Inside the small cabin, the rancher was awake before the first light had fully touched the land. His mind replayed the strange words the woman had spoken the night before, "Tie me up." He couldn't make sense of them, and yet they lingered, mysterious and unsettling, like a shadow at the edge of his thoughts. He went about his morning chores in silence, feeding the horses and checking the fences, all the while glancing at the small bed where the woman still rested. When she finally emerged from the cabin, wrapped in a worn blanket, her movements were careful but graceful. She carried herself with a quiet confidence that seemed to say she had survived far more than he could imagine. "Good morning," the rancher said cautiously as he handed her a cup of warm water. "Good morning," she replied, her voice calm, yet carrying the hint of a smile. "I slept well, thanks to you." She helped mend fences, gather firewood, and feed the animals. The rancher watched in quiet amazement at how skilled she was. Her hands moved with purpose, precise and careful, and she seemed to understand the land in a way that only someone who had survived the harshest conditions could. "You're good at this," he said finally, wiping sweat from his brow. She looked at him briefly, her dark eyes meeting his, and shrugged slightly. "I've had to learn," she said simply. "Life does not wait for anyone." She was not like anyone he had ever met, and yet in her presence there was a feeling of familiarity, as though her survival had a rhythm that echoed his own quiet life. By midday, the sun had climbed high, and the desert heat pressed against them like a living thing. They rested under the shade of a large mesquite tree, sharing a simple meal. As they ate, the rancher found himself glancing at her more often than he realized. There was something about her that drew attention, not just her strength, but the quiet intensity in her eyes, the careful way she observed the world. After a long pause, she spoke again. "About last night," she began, her voice measured, "I am not asking for trust lightly. What I will ask is unusual. But it is necessary. If you do not, it could put both of us in danger." The rest of the day passed in a quiet rhythm, punctuated by chores and small, shared silences. The woman continued to help with the ranch, demonstrating skills that impressed the rancher more with each passing hour. She knew how to move quietly among the animals, how to repair broken tools, how to find the best water sources in the surrounding desert. Her presence was like a silent strength, steady and unwavering, and he found himself relying on her help in ways he had never relied on anyone before. As evening approached, the sky turned shades of deep orange and purple. They sat on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the distant mountains. The desert was alive with sound, the rustle of the wind, the distant cry of birds returning to their nests, and the soft murmurs of animals settling in for the night. "You have survived much," the rancher said quietly, almost to himself. "I can see it in your eyes. There is always more to fight for, more to protect. That is why I am here and why I asked you to trust me." The rancher could feel the invisible threads of danger stretching across the desert, threats he could not see but could sense. He wondered who she had escaped from and what dangers might still follow her. He kept his questions to himself, letting her reveal her story when she was ready. That night, the wind picked up, carrying with it the chill of approaching desert cold. They lit a small fire outside and the woman sat nearby, quietly sharpening a small knife. The rancher noticed how careful her movements were, the precision of every cut and the intensity of her focus. She was preparing for something, though he could not guess what. "Why do you keep that knife so close?" he asked gently, trying to sound casual. "For protection," she replied simply, her eyes never leaving her task. "And for preparedness. One never knows what the desert may bring." She had lived in a world of danger, of decisions that required courage and clarity, and he realized that he was witnessing someone shaped by extraordinary circumstances. As the fire crackled and the stars appeared one by one in the vast night sky, they talked in quiet, measured words. She shared small pieces of her past, stories of the land she had known, the dangers she had faced, and the lessons she had learned. Each story revealed more of her resilience, her intelligence, and her unwavering spirit. And yet, she revealed little about the immediate threat that had brought her to the rancher's doorstep, keeping the details close to her chest. The rancher listened intently, learning to understand her without needing every explanation. He realized that trust was not about knowing everything, but about recognizing strength, courage, and intention. He had spent years alone, living by routine and solitude, yet in her presence, he felt a connection he had long forgotten. Hours passed, and the fire burned low. They sat together in silence for a while, listening to the desert night. There was a quiet companionship that grew between them, subtle but undeniable. He respected her strength, admired her courage, and slowly, a sense of protective responsibility settled over him. "Tomorrow," she said finally, her voice soft but firm, "you will tie me up. It will seem strange, perhaps frightening, but it is necessary. You must trust me. Trust is more valuable than gold in times like these, and it is what will keep us safe." But he knew one thing for certain: his quiet life on the ranch, so long predictable and solitary, was about to change forever. As he settled into sleep, he felt the weight of responsibility but also a flicker of hope. He had saved her, yes, but she had also saved something within him, a sense of connection, of purpose, and of courage he had thought lost. In the desert silence, the bond between them grew stronger, built on trust, survival, and an unspoken understanding that the days ahead would test both of them in ways they could not yet imagine. And so, with the desert night watching silently over the ranch, they rested, each aware of the other's presence, each preparing silently for the trials to come. The mysterious words, "tie me up," hung in the air, a puzzle waiting for its moment, a test of trust that would reveal their true strength and the depth of their connection. The next morning, the desert was quiet and still, the air carrying a faint chill that reminded the rancher winter was approaching. The sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the rugged landscape, and the ranch seemed unusually alive with sounds. The rustle of the horses' tails, the soft scuffing of hooves on dry soil, and the distant cry of a hawk circling above. Yet beneath the calm, the rancher could feel an invisible tension, a sense that the quiet moments of yesterday were only a brief pause before something more significant began. The woman awoke early, as was her habit. She moved with purpose, her eyes sharp and alert, scanning the surroundings with a vigilance that seemed almost instinctive. When the rancher offered her water and breakfast, she accepted quietly, giving him a nod of thanks, but there was an intensity in her gaze, a restlessness he had not seen before. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice calm but firm. "For what?" he replied cautiously. He already knew the answer, but hearing her say it aloud made his stomach tight. "To be tied up," she said plainly. "It is time." His life had been governed by caution, by routine and solitude, and yet here was a situation that defied reason, asking him to act on faith alone. He looked at her, seeing not just a woman who had been through hardship, but someone whose survival instincts were honed to perfection. Somehow he believed her. "All right," he said finally. "I will do it. But I need to know what I am supposed to do." He had lived alone for so long, relying on his own judgment, and now he was being asked to follow instructions he could barely comprehend. Yet, something in her tone, the steady certainty of her eyes, told him that this was necessary. They moved to the back of the cabin, where a sturdy wooden post stood firmly planted in the ground. The woman handed him the rope, her hand steady despite the situation. She extended her wrists, and he took them carefully, tying them as she had instructed. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear of her, but from the strange responsibility of following this cryptic plan. Once she was secured, she tested the rope with a small tug, nodding in satisfaction. "It is tight but not painful," she said. "Good, that is exactly as it should be." As they stood there, the wind shifting through the desert brush, a sudden sound broke the silence, a faint crackling like footsteps moving carefully over the dry earth. The rancher stiffened, his hand instinctively moving toward a nearby tool for protection. The woman, even bound, turned her head sharply, listening intently. "They are near," she said softly, almost to herself. His heart leapt. "Who?" A simple rope and a post, and yet, according to her, this small act could protect them from unknown pursuers. He took a deep breath, trusting her judgment, and stood watch as she quietly explained the plan. "They will think I am restrained. They may approach cautiously, looking for someone to capture. While they are distracted, we will have the chance to act," she said. The rancher nodded, still unsure of the full strategy, but he could see the clarity in her eyes. She had survived before, and she had a plan. That was enough. Hours passed in tense silence. The sun climbed higher and the heat began to press against them, but they did not move from their positions. The rancher's nerves were on edge, every sound amplified in the stillness of the desert. Finally, distant dust clouds appeared on the horizon, the telltale signs of approaching riders. The rancher's heart pounded as he realized the danger was real, imminent. The woman remained calm, even in her restrained position, her eyes scanning the horizon with practiced precision. "Stay calm," she whispered. "Do exactly as I instructed. Wait for my signal." He nodded, understanding instinctively. Though she was bound, she moved with surprising agility, slipping slightly to the side, hidden by the shadows and the post. The rancher stayed still, heart racing, watching as the men advanced, unaware of the careful trap laid before them. The woman whispered instructions, directing him to remain calm, to watch their movements, to be ready to act only when she signaled. Every second felt like an eternity. The rancher realized that he had never experienced anything like this, the tension so thick it made the air feel heavy. And yet, through it all, the woman's presence was steadying, her calm determination a guiding force. The men approached the cabin, cautious but confident. They did not notice the subtle movements of the woman, nor did they anticipate the clever ruse that had been set. As they reached the cabin, she gave a slight nod. The rancher understood immediately. This was the moment to act. With careful precision, the woman moved, untangling herself from the post in a fluid motion that surprised even him. She was free, yet she remained calm, almost serene as she positioned herself strategically. The rancher followed her lead, keeping low, ready to assist if necessary. The men paused, confused by what they saw. The woman's sudden freedom and composed stance threw them off balance, disrupting their plan. One of them called out, demanding she surrender, but her calm, confident voice answered, firm and unwavering. "You will not find what you seek here," she said. Leave now or face consequences you are not prepared for. He had seen her courage, her intelligence, and her ability to survive impossible situations. And now he realized he was part of that survival, part of a plan larger than himself. After a moment of uncertainty, the men hesitated, then slowly retreated, realizing the risk of pressing further. Dust rose around them as they mounted their horses and rode back toward the horizon, leaving the ranch in silence once more. The woman exhaled slowly, a faint smile touching her lips. "They will not return soon," she said. "We are safe for now." Yet he knew with absolute certainty that her survival skills were extraordinary, and her ability to read the world around her was unmatched. As they returned to the cabin, the sun began its descent, painting the desert in warm hues of orange and gold. The woman moved with quiet grace, tending to herself and the small details of their survival. The rancher followed, learning silently, absorbing every movement and instruction. He realized that this experience had changed him, opened his mind and heart to courage, trust, and the unexpected bonds that could form between strangers in the harshest of landscapes. That night, they sat together outside, the stars appearing one by one in the vast desert sky. They shared a simple meal, the silence between them filled with unspoken understanding. The rancher marveled at her resilience, her intelligence, and the strength of her spirit. And the woman, for her part, seemed to acknowledge without words the quiet support and bravery of the man who had given her refuge. "Tomorrow," she said softly, her eyes reflecting the starlight, "we continue. But tonight rest. You have done well, you trusted me, and that trust has kept us safe." And in that quiet desert night, with the vast sky stretching endlessly above, the rancher realized that life on the ranch, so long predictable and solitary, had become a story of courage, trust, and the extraordinary resilience of the human spirit. The morning dawned with a chill in the desert air, sharper than the day before. The rancher awoke early, as was his habit, his mind already alert to the movements of the world around him. The woman had been awake before him, sitting quietly outside the cabin, her gaze scanning the distant horizon with the precision of someone who had spent a lifetime reading the land. The sun was barely rising, yet her presence seemed like a calm force, steady and unshakable. "Good morning," the rancher said softly, not wanting to startle her. "Morning," she replied, her voice calm and clear. "Today will be a long day. We must prepare. And today, the plan will reach its most important moment." They began the day with their usual routines, tending the animals and checking the fences. But every movement was purposeful, each task carried out with heightened awareness. The woman moved with fluid precision, guiding him silently with subtle gestures and careful instructions. He watched and followed, learning not just the work of the ranch, but the quiet art of observation and anticipation that she practiced so naturally. By midday, the heat of the sun pressed down on the land, and the desert seemed to shimmer with intensity. The woman paused under the shade of a large mesquite tree, turning to the rancher. "It is time," she said. "We begin the next phase." Her calm presence steadied him, even as his heart raced with the knowledge of what was to come. She tested the restraints briefly, ensuring they were secure but not painful, then gave him a small nod. "We wait," she said. "Patience is key." The rancher could feel the heat pressing against him, the sweat running down his back, and the restless stirrings of the horses in the yard. Every sound, every movement in the distance made his heart leap. Yet through it all, the woman remained calm, her dark eyes scanning the horizon with an unwavering focus. Finally, a faint dust cloud appeared on the edge of the desert, growing larger as it approached. The rancher's heart pounded. Several riders appeared, their horses kicking up small clouds of sand as they advanced. He recognized the signs immediately. These were the people who had been following her, relentless and determined. The woman whispered instructions, guiding him on exactly how to remain hidden and silent. Every detail mattered, the angle of the sun, the position of the shadows, the timing of each movement. The rancher followed her guidance carefully, aware that a single misstep could undo all their preparation. The riders slowed as they neared the cabin, scanning the land with suspicion. One dismounted and moved cautiously toward the back, where the woman remained bound. The rancher's hands were steady, though his heart raced, ready to act at her signal. "Now," she whispered. He held his breath as she executed the plan with precision. Though bound, she moved with a grace and control that defied the restraints, slipping into a position that kept her safe while confusing their pursuers. The rancher followed, keeping low and ready, his mind entirely focused on her instructions. The men approached, wary and uncertain. They saw her tied to the post and assumed she was helpless, an easy target. But her calm, deliberate movements revealed a different reality, one that they could not anticipate. The rancher watched in awe as she turned the situation to their advantage, using the appearance of vulnerability to create a strategic opening. One of the men called out, demanding she surrender, but she responded with unwavering confidence, her voice calm and commanding. "You will not find what you seek here," she said. "Leave now and you may survive. Press further and you will regret it." Now he realized he was part of that survival, part of a plan larger than himself. After a tense pause, the men hesitated, exchanging uncertain glances. The woman's calm authority and the clever setup had thrown them off balance. Slowly, they backed away, realizing the risk of pressing further was too great. Dust rose around their horses as they retreated, leaving the ranch and its occupants in relative safety. The rancher exhaled, relief washing over him. The danger had passed, at least for now. He could not fully comprehend the strategy or the danger they had faced, but he understood one thing clearly. Her survival skills and intelligence were extraordinary, and her plan had worked flawlessly. As they returned to the cabin, the sun began its descent, casting long shadows across the desert. The woman moved with quiet grace, untangling herself from the post and tending to the rope and the small details of their safety. The rancher followed silently, absorbing everything, learning more with each movement and instruction. He realized that this experience had changed him, opening his mind and heart to courage, trust, and the unexpected bonds that could form between strangers in the harshest landscapes. They prepared a simple meal outside, sitting together as the sky turned shades of deep orange and purple. The desert was alive with sound, the soft rustle of animals settling in for the night, the distant call of birds and the whisper of the wind through the cacti. They ate in silence, each lost in their thoughts, reflecting on the events that had just unfolded. "You have done well," she said softly, breaking the silence. "Your trust, your calm, your willingness to follow instructions, it has made the difference. Without it, things could have gone very differently. And now, we know we can survive together." They had faced danger, survived through careful planning and courage, and in the process, forged a connection neither fully understood but both relied upon. As the wind whispered through the desert, carrying the faint scent of sage and dry earth, the woman spoke again. "Tomorrow, we move forward, but tonight rest. The trials of today have tested our strength, our trust, and our courage. We have passed them, but more challenges await." They settled near the fire, the quiet crackle of flames providing warmth and comfort. The woman's eyes, once sharp and vigilant, softened as she looked at him. "You have been brave," she said, "not because you sought danger, but because you faced it with trust and patience. That is a rare quality." He had done what he needed to do, but it was her guidance, her skill, and her unwavering calm that had truly carried them through. He realized that life on the ranch, so long solitary and predictable, had changed. He had discovered courage, trust, and a connection that he had thought lost forever. And as the night stretched on, the desert silent and still around them, both of them understood something important. Their survival depended not just on skill or strategy, but on the bond they had formed, the trust they had placed in one another, and the courage to face danger together. The trials of today had tested them, shaped them, and prepared them for the challenges that would come with tomorrow. In that quiet desert night, with the stars shining above and the wind whispering through the cacti, the rancher realized that his life, once simple and solitary, had become something extraordinary. He had learned the true meaning of trust, the power of courage, and the importance of human connection, even in the harshest, loneliest places. And the woman, for her part, knew that she could rely on him, that his quiet strength and steady presence were now part of the foundation of their shared survival. The night ended not with fear, but with a quiet confidence, a shared understanding, and the knowledge that together they could face whatever challenges the desert and life might place before them. The morning arrived with a soft glow over the desert, painting the rugged landscape in gentle hues of gold and pink. The air was crisp and still, carrying the faint scent of sage and dry earth. The rancher awoke early, his mind alert yet calm, a sense of anticipation mingling with relief. The trials of the previous days had left him tired, yet stronger, more aware of both the world around him and the unexpected bonds that had formed in this harsh, quiet place. The woman had already risen, moving quietly about the cabin as if she had been awake for hours. Her dark eyes scanned the horizon, sharp and focused, yet there was a softness in her expression that had not been there when they first met. The past days had revealed much to them both, the danger of the world, the importance of trust, and the unexpected strength that could be found in one another. "Good morning," the rancher said softly, offering a small smile. "Morning," she replied, her voice calm and even though there was a subtle lightness to it. "Today we finish what we started, but first we prepare." The woman guided him with careful instructions, showing him the importance of observation, timing, and awareness. Every movement, every small decision was critical, and the rancher followed her lead, trusting her completely. By midday, the sun had climbed high, its heat pressing down on the land. They paused under the shade of a mesquite tree to rest, sharing a simple meal. The woman looked at him with a faint smile. "You have grown accustomed to my ways quickly," she said. "You have shown patience, courage, and trust. Those qualities will carry us through what comes next." He had faced danger, uncertainty, and fear, yet he had survived, and more importantly, he had learned to trust and rely on another person. "Are you ready?" she asked, her voice steady, carrying no hint of doubt. "For what?" he replied, though he already knew. "To move on, to leave this place safely, to ensure that those who seek me do not return." The desert had been their refuge, their testing ground, but it was not permanent. The woman's journey was far from over, and he had been entrusted with a role in her survival. He felt the weight of responsibility, but also a quiet confidence. They had faced danger together, survived through strategy, patience, and trust, and now the final challenge lay ahead. They prepared carefully, gathering supplies, checking the animals, and ensuring that every detail was in place. The woman moved with practiced precision, her instructions clear and deliberate. The rancher followed without hesitation, fully aware that their survival depended on careful planning and execution. As the sun began its descent toward the horizon, a distant dust cloud appeared on the desert floor. The rancher's heart quickened. He recognized the signs immediately. Those who had been pursuing the woman had returned. They were cautious but determined, moving with purpose across the open land. The woman assessed the situation quickly, her eyes scanning the terrain, calculating their options. She gave the rancher precise instructions, guiding him on how to position himself, where to stay hidden, and how to remain alert without revealing their presence. Her calm, focused demeanor steadied him, reminding him of the strength they had found together in the past days. The pursuers drew closer, their figures becoming more distinct against the bright sky. They dismounted near the ranch, moving carefully, their eyes searching for any sign of the woman. The rancher's hands were steady, though his heart raced, and he watched as she executed the final phase of their plan with remarkable skill. Though free, she used the landscape to her advantage, moving quietly and strategically to ensure that the men remained unaware of her exact position. The rancher followed her instructions precisely, remaining vigilant and ready to act if necessary. The tension in the air was palpable, each moment stretched as though time itself had slowed. One of the pursuers called out, demanding the woman surrender, but she responded with calm authority, her voice carrying across the open land. "You will not find me here," she said firmly. "Leave now, and avoid consequences you are not prepared for." The rancher exhaled deeply, relief washing over him. The danger had passed for the last time, and the desert, once tense and watchful, returned to its quiet, expansive calm. He watched the woman as she moved with quiet grace, tending to herself and checking the surroundings. Her composure and intelligence had guided them through every challenge, and he felt a deep respect for her courage and skill. As the sun dipped low, painting the desert in hues of gold and crimson, the woman finally spoke. "We are safe. For now, the danger has passed. You have been brave, patient, and steadfast. I could not have done this without you. And now, our trust has ensured survival." His life, once predictable and solitary, had been transformed by courage, trust, and an extraordinary bond that had grown between them. "You will continue your journey," he said softly, his voice carrying both sadness and respect. "The world beyond this desert is waiting for you. And I will remain here, tending the land, but I will remember everything we have faced together. That is a gift I will carry with me always." It was a connection built on trust, courage, and the shared experience of facing danger together. "Will you come back?" he asked quietly, almost afraid of the answer. She paused, considering, then smiled faintly. "Perhaps. The desert has a way of keeping people connected, even when they are far apart. If fate allows, we may meet again. But for now, I must go." As she prepared to leave, the woman turned one last time, her dark eyes meeting his with a mixture of gratitude and quiet strength. "Take care of yourself," she said, "and remember what you have learned. Courage and trust are more powerful than any weapon." The dust of her passage lingered briefly in the air, then settled, leaving the ranch and the land calm and still once more. The rancher stood quietly, watching the sky change colors as the sun set completely, leaving only the glow of distant stars. He felt a mixture of sadness and hope. Sadness, because the woman who had brought adventure, challenge, and companionship into his life was leaving. Hope, because he knew that the bond they had formed and the lessons they had learned together would remain forever. That night, he tended the fire alone, reflecting on the days that had passed. The desert, vast and unyielding, seemed quieter now, yet it carried the echoes of their shared experience. He realized that his life, once predictable and solitary, had become richer, fuller, and filled with meaning he had never known. The stars shone brightly, watching silently over the ranch. The rancher understood that life would continue, challenges would arise, and solitude would return. But the courage, trust, and connection he had experienced with the woman would remain, a reminder that even in the harshest, loneliest places, extraordinary bonds could be formed, and survival depended not just on skill or strength, but on trust, courage, and the human spirit. As the desert night settled around him, he felt a quiet peace. The woman was gone, but the story they had shared would linger forever in his mind and heart. And somewhere, across the vast landscape, she too would carry the memory of their shared courage, their trust, and the moments that had changed both of their lives forever.